Here we are in your fantastic office, and you've just been demonstrating your Wurlitzer, your original Wurlitzer, with 78s no less.
Yeah, sounds good,
What
huh?
a bit of machinery. And the music that's on there, I guess, would have been some of the music that inspired you to start songwriting and performing.
Yeah, we just played Hound Dog, Elvis. I remember that in my Auntie Gin's living room. They used to have, my Uncle Harry, who was her husband, had it plumbed through the house. You'd never seen that. I mean, in Liverpool, he had speakers. You go in the bedroom, and there was a speaker. You could hear whatever was playing on the record player. Yeah, so that's huge memories for me.
It's beautiful. A Wurlitzer, of course, for people who are listening. I mean, the only jukebox, isn't it, really, a Wurlitzer?
Love it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. It's a work of art, I think, as well.
Yeah, it is. It is. Does it mine? I'm lucky enough to have one that plays CD, so it's nowhere near as old as yours. Does it take a little while for the water to get going? The newer model does. It does that one do it immediately?
No, it just seems to work. Like, I just press the thing.
Wonderful. The reason that we're having a chat, Paul, is about Band on the Run, and of course it's being reissued and it comes out in November.
Yeah.
How important in your musical career do you think that Band on the Run was?
It was really important because we'd started, a few years before, we'd started Wings, and that was like the thing I was going to do after the Beatles. And it was like, follow that. It was like almost impossible. Because, in the Beatles, we'd seen other groups coming up, and they were following the Beatles, and we'd always thought, it's going to be hard, lads. So suddenly I was in that position following myself and the other guys, and it was hard, So we'd done a few years of trying to get it together, trying to establish what Wings was going to be, what style the music was going to be, and I wanted it to be anything but Beatles, 'cause I didn't want it to just be copy. I thought it'd be a bit of a pale imitation. So we'd worked at it, and by the time Band on the Run arrived, suddenly I thought we'd got it. So it was a big, important album for us, yeah. And we toured around about that time. We had our first big tour in America. It all came together at that time.
Your reissue of this, which is in so many formats now, I mean, there's a format for everybody, and it's a different age, isn't it? But when you were promoting, for example, Band on the Run, it was, Rolling Stone magazine, maybe a bit of radio, and that was it. Now, there's so many television and radio stations and websites that want a bit of Paul McCartney's time. Is that why you've done it in so many different formats? Because you recognise, Paul, that media is now consumed in so many different ways by so many different people.
Yeah, I think, what I always do is I look at what your audience is and what they want and how they're going to consume it, as you say. Yeah, it used to be easy because it was just, a 45 record. They'd want that, that's a single. Then they'd want an LP, that's the album. End of story, kind of thing, maybe an EP occasionally. Now, you've got all the formats right through from, you'd still do vinyl as well, actually, for the collectors. Yeah, I love it. The engineers say it sounds best. The tech boys say that's actually how to listen to records. And DJs in clubs, that's kind of... So I love the re-emergence of vinyl. But yeah, that is it. There's so many ways people are going to hear it that I think, you know what, it's actually not me thinking. It's my people who come to me and sort of say, well, we should do that because there's going to be those people. I go, yeah, sounds good. We've got to do a vinyl, yay. And you've got to do the bog standard CD because you don't want to make it pricey. And then you've got to do the luxury collector's item. Yeah, okay. Then you've got to do the download thing. So actually, truth is, I don't mind because I've lived through so many ways of releasing music, through cassettes, through 8 tracks, from vinyl all the way through all that stuff to CDs. Where I remember the famous demonstration George Martin was giving in Air London, and he said, "You see, boys," he said, "the great thing about the CD is it's absolutely unbreakable." And he hit it on the desk and it broke. Went, yeah, okay, George. Yeah, I love that one.
Can't wait for downloads. Yeah. Can't break those.
So I've seen it all.
Yes.
So to me, it's down to the music. I don't care how it gets released. But yeah, it's released this time round in a lot of different formats. But you try and make sure that each one is great. make sure that's a really good vinyl, really good luxury package, really good straightforward CD, etc.
Let me take you back to 1973. You left the Beatles. It's often referred to as a messy divorce. Then you did a solo album, and then you did 2 Wings albums. And you actually went on the road and turned up at venues and sold tickets for 50p with Wings, didn't you? Because you wanted to be out there amongst the music fans.
Yeah.
And then you came to Band on the Run. And instead of recording it at perhaps your spiritual recording home, Abbey Road in London, certainly for many, many years, you went to Lagos in Nigeria. Why on earth did you do that?
Whatever possessed us. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Around that time, you get fashions in music, the same as anything else. Around that time, people were thinking of recording things in slightly unusual places. You'd had the band going to Woodstock and doing Big Pink. So there was a little bit of that in the air. And so I thought, it might be good to just, get out of town and just go somewhere interesting. So I'd heard that EMI, our record company, had studios all over the world. So I just rung them up and sort of said, can you send me a list of where you've got studios? So they sent back this really interesting list with Rio, China, Africa. It was like, wow, it's exotic. And I said, Africa, Lagos. So I went, wow. So it was between kind of like Rio, Africa. I just like the idea of it being really exotic.
Okay.
Now, little did I realize that Africa was a little bit more primitive than Abbey Road.
It wasn't the smoothest of experiences for you, was it? Because you had a couple of members of the band who said, look, I can earn, $2,000 being a session musician here, there and everywhere. I'm not coming.
Yeah.
And to cut a long story short, it ended up really as Linda, you, and Denny Lane.
Yeah.
And then you were in a recording studio, if I'm correct. You can obviously correct me. That the EMI pressing plant was next to, making records.
Yeah.
It was boiling hot.
True.
You recorded a load of songs as demos, and then unfortunately got accosted by some deeply unpleasant people on the way home and had to hand them over and recorded the whole album from memory. Would that be about it, the potted history?
Just about it, that's it. End of story. It was a wild experience. I think, I just loved African music and the rhythm, really. Later Paul Simon would do Graceland, and that was kind of what I was loving. He actually put it all together. So I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just sort of get a bit of that influence, and I'll go down, take my songs, get a bit of that influence. But as you say, it was quite sort of shocking when we got down there. Studio wasn't quite built. They didn't know about vocal booths. We'd say, well, where's the vocal booth? And the guy says, what? And we said, well, you've got to have a box, and it's got to be enclosed. It's got to be wood, and so you can't hear the person drumming. Anyway, so we encouraged them to build vocal booths. So we probably got the first vocal booths in Lagos. But it was quite crazy. See, there's me going, Africa, let's go. No, I didn't ask anyone, is it the monsoon season? You don't,
No.
Well, actually, some people do. But I didn't. I thought, go. So it was monsoon. Studio wasn't built. I got back from there, and there's a letter from one of the high-up guys at EMI, Len Wood, actually, who said, dear Paul, under no circumstances go to Lagos. There's been an outbreak of cholera. So it was like that, it was like, whoa. And it was very sort of underdeveloped. The oil had hit Nigeria, so oil was coming in. So it was about to get developed, but it wasn't when we were there. And it was quite a crazy place.
It was 2 months, wasn't it, approximately? I think you were there. And you came out with what many people think is one of the absolute peaks of your career, the album, 9 tracks. On the American version, Hell on Wheels was put on later, wasn't it? And you actually broke your golden rule in releasing singles, didn't you, from this album?
Well, I think really what happened, I'm a great listener to other people. I don't pretend to know the record business and stuff. I just do the songs, I sing them, I play, on Band on the Run, I play the instruments and stuff, some of the instruments. But there was this very good guy at Capitol Records called Al Corey, and I was just releasing what I thought was going to be the good records, but he rang me up and Band on the Run had done okay. It had gone up the charts, but it was now going back down in America. He rang me up. He said, "Paul," he said, "you know, I need to talk to you about the singles you're going to release." And I said, "Well, like what? What do you think?" He said, "Well, Jet, it's got to be a single." I said, "Oh yeah, you think so?" He said, "Jet, it's a killer single." So I said, "You know what, Al? Why don't you like tell me what to do and I'll just do it." So he did. He came up with this brilliant plan. And suddenly that was a big hit. And then Band on the Run went back up to #1. So I thought, well, he's the boy for me.
And that
so
song was about a dog, wasn't it?
It was about a pony.
Yeah.
It was about a pony.
A
yeah,
pony.
We had a little horse called Jet, yeah. I mean, you know, my songs, they're like so veiled. It can start off about a pony, but it ends up like about a love affair. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just like, we did happen to have a little pony called Jet, yeah.
Band on the Run coming out in the new formats that you've talked about already, and we talked about it being a Grammy award-winning album and selling millions of copies around the world. You talked about the marketing there of how it was dealt with in America. And I was just thinking, when you left the Beatles, what was your mindset insofar as when you did something? But you said Wings was the project for you after the Beatles. You did a solo album. When you first went back into the studio, did you worry about what the critics would say, what the fans would say about you doing whatever you were doing, or what the remaining Beatles would say?
Originally, when I went in the studio right after the breakup, I was doing the McCartney album, which was kind of a homemade thing, and I didn't worry what anyone was doing, because I was just making it in my front living room. So I was just making that for me, and it was almost like a hobby record. That then I thought, well, no, this is okay. This is like an album. I played it to a couple of people. They said, yeah, it's interesting. So I didn't worry about that one, but I think then the next one, all of those things that you said came into play. It was like, oh my God, what are the fans going to think about this? What are the critics going to think? And what are the ex-Beatles going to think, you know? Yeah. So it did get, it got kind of difficult. I think the main difficulty was the only music I'd known was early rock and roll and soul covers that we did with the Beatles, which is the early Beatles albums are, you know, covers of other people's songs. We'd known that. Then we'd known whatever the Beatles did. And then the Beatles folded. So then it was like, well, I don't know any other kind of music. How am I going to invent another kind of music? So that was the big question. And so I just kind of set the bar at, it mustn't be Beatles. It mustn't be the Beatles' music anymore. You know, because it's going to look like a pale imitation. It's going to look like I wished I was still in the Beatles, and then the inevitable thing then would be someone, well, John would have sung that better. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned John, because I got a couple of quotes here from what he said about your solo album, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but I'll share it with the audience and gauge your reaction after I've just done it, Paul. John said, I thought Paul's, this is referring to your first solo album, was rubbish. It's a bit harsh. I think he'll make a better one when he's frightened into it.
We like that.
Yeah.
That's right. You know, that's right. He's a good one with words. Was
that the first one? I
suppose he's talking. Well, yeah, there was a lot of bitterness around the time. But, you know, I mean, that's the good thing about the Beatles. Nobody held back. You know, you got what you thought was what came out the mouths. I think if he's talking about the McCartney album, I can see why you'd think it was rubbish. I actually don't think it was. But again, you know, that was the great thing about the creative partnership. I didn't have to agree with John. And often we didn't agree, but then we agreed to differ and we got on with it, you know. I think looking back on it, I think the McCartney album was quite an interesting thing for me to do. I think it was quite daring. I'm listening to it now, I'm thinking, after the Beatles, there's a couple of things that are just little funky instrumentals. But then you hear them, you hear someone like Cameron Crowe, the film director, he uses them in his films, and you go, oh, that's funky. I love that. You know, you get Billy Preston ringing me up when he was alive, saying, you know, Ooh You, oh, it's one of my favourite tracks. I remember Dave Stewart was very keen on the album. So, you know, it's a matter of taste.
Sounds like it was something you had to do, Paul, really. It filled that sort of vacuum between Wings and the end of the Beatles, really.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think, John saying he'll do something good when he's frightened into it isn't a bad comment. No. That's fair
Maybe
comment.
Band on the Run was that, really, because he actually said, and I quote, Band on the Run is a great album. It's good Paul's music.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, John. I know he's quoted somewhere as he heard Coming Up, one of my other tracks, and that frightened him into making a good record. That was one of the things. That is the great thing about good competitiveness within a group. I'll come up with something, and it's not like I'm trying to get better than him, but I'm trying to get better than him. You know what I mean? I'm trying to do my best, and he'll go, oh, that's a bit good. Right, I better do my best. And he'll come up with something brilliant, and I'll go, oh, that's a bit good. And then I'll have to do something else. But I think it's a great way to work. It's not like you hate each other's work. You love his work. Because obviously we worked on each other's songs. And by the time we got into the studio, we were helping arrange each other's stuff. So you were working together. But this competition aspect was actually just a good way to work.
He would have been 70 if he'd have been alive, as you know, in a few days' time, early October. Do you think you would have buried all the differences between yourselves and would have been really good mates if he'd have still been with us?
Yeah, I think so. One of my great blessings in my life as far as that's concerned is we had buried the hatchet. It was so good before he got murdered. It was like, oh my God, because it had been so bitter and so mean. And we were just, frankly, just pissed off with each other. I thought the whole business thing of Alan Klein was like a major mistake. And years later, everyone in the Beatles, everyone now says you were right. Because without putting too fine a point on it, I saved the whole thing. It wouldn't be now. Anyway, but I had to go through this almighty struggle to do it. And the feeling was so bad that we had a year or two there where it was like just not fun. But after that, I was very lucky because little by little I started to ring John. He would ring me. And I remember, we had a bread strike over here. You remember it well. Couldn't get bread for weeks. What a disaster. But, it sounds just like a joke now. It sounds like Monty Python, the great bread strike. But you couldn't get it.
You should come over here then, Paul.
Yeah. Exactly, I'm baking. No, we were talking about baking bread because I'd said to him, I actually had to go down, if you wanted bread, I had to go down to the high street and beg my baker. I said, give us some yeast, I'll find a recipe, which I did. And for the length of the duration of the bread strike, I baked some mighty loaves, So he was then in New York in a kind of domestic period, just after he and Yoko had Sean. And we were just chatting. He said, I'm into baking bread. I said, oh, yeah. What recipe are you using? What are you doing, wholemeal? So we were talking things like that. So our relationship got really nice and really sort of back to a strong relationship. And then he was, so tragically killed. But the one thing I could take from it was at least we weren't at loggerheads. At least, we were mates again, so... Because I don't know if I could have handled the other.
I wonder if John had still been with us and you'd have said, look, John, I'm going to reissue Band on the Run. And it's an iconic album cover. You've got John Conte on there. You've got Michael Parkinson. There's 6 celebrities on there. People don't know if they've got it. How do you fancy being celebrity number 7? Do you think you might have done it for a laugh?
If we were going to re-photograph you, yeah, he might have done, yeah.
Well, with technology now, you could have just photographed him and slid him in.
Photoshopped him in, yeah. Obviously to speculate what might have happened if he's still alive. I think what you were saying before, it is interesting to think what would have happened if we'd have stayed together. And, if we'd have stayed together and the vibes have been great, who knows? You have no idea what might have happened. I think what you have to do, though, is get real round here. We had split up. And we had looked at the split as being the Beatles come full circle. We kind of said we started there, and that's actually why we had the photograph taken, like the first photo we'd ever taken. We went back however many years it was and took it again, because we knew that was like the end of the Beatles. We were very conscious, and then people would say to us, before John died, they'd say, would you get back together? We'll do a reunion concert. And it was always, nah, somebody said, you can't reheat a souffle. It's like, we've done it.
Very true.
You can't really go there again. We've done the Beatles. And anything now might just be not as good.
Paul, great pleasure to talk to you. Good luck with
Lovely
Band
to
on the
speak to
Run,
you.
the reissue, and in all its formats. And thanks for putting the time and effort in to bring it to not only a whole new audience, but also the people who bought it first time around and want to enjoy it all over again.
Great, man. Thanks a lot. Yeah, well, I heard it the other day over at Abbey Road, and it's that thing. It sounds like crystal clear, It's like, I love it.